So there's a lot of disturbance at my end. Can you hear me clearly
Now
now?
it stopped. Now it stopped. Now it stopped.
Some are traveling. Those who are not speaking, can they mute themselves? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so one thing that I am going to do is get you to speed track again, and we will try and look at what the classroom has. So in the classroom, I'm sorry, I haven't yet uploaded anything for session 3. I totally forgot about it after I went to the meeting. But um, also I had some issues uploading it onto the YouTube. So I'll do that. But in the meantime, for discourse analysis in session 4, what I have done, which is going to be both reading and writing, is I have posted these kinds of materials for us. And one thing that I'm going to take you through is this teaching questions. For a simple reason, this will cover both your reading and your writing to a large extent. Uh, the fictional part, and I think some of it can go into the non-fiction. So we will do analysis today, and you will attempt to write an analysis as your assignment at the end of the session. So that would be what it would take up. Now, I know you have heard of the Socratic method, right? I mean, in your own learnings and teachings, you would have heard of the Socratic method, isn't it? Can someone tell me what it is, if you know? Sorry. Yeah, I am audible. Does anyone know what a Socratic method is? Socrates gave this method.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so it's used in a lot of especially Montessori, in some of the Montessori's teachings, etc. Also they teach. Socrates, when he was there along, I mean, he believed that children or any learner should not be taught as much as they should be questioned. And I'm going to flip the screen one second. So he believed that, and he believes that basically the teachers will engage the students by asking questions that require them to generate answers. And in doing that, they will develop and construct their own learning. I'm sure you've heard of constructivism to death, and constructionism also, right? And so these are, yeah. These are points where you're asking children to construct their own language, be active learners, develop, reflect, refine their understanding. And so, one element that we're going to do as readers, and also be very conscious as to what we will do as writers, is to analyze some of the text and see how the writer has manipulated us. A lot of this is going to be useful even in non-fiction texts because it ultimately is the same. So if you're taking up advertising, persuasive writing, all of it uses elements from fiction, and a lot of it from, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing so much of fiction. And a lot of the non-fiction writing, which is very, very straightforward, is very literal in its sense and has certain complications, but is not difficult to do overall, which is one of the reasons why, as students, most of us prefer to write formal letters than informal letters, because we were like, formal letter ke liye, if I have my format ready, I will get my marks. So, Socratic method, as traditionally is called, is basically not teach anyone anything and just ask them questions and guide them towards the answer, so to speak. And you can look this up in a lot of places. It's very much aware, around online. I'm not going to do the poem because I've been doing too many poems, I realized. What I am going to do is something like this. So you have this on the screen.
Yeah,
He wrote his, yeah. What do you understand of the character? who wrote his address like this. So it's definitely a he. Now, how old do you think he is?
Maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Okay. And what is his, I mean, what would you think is his economic background? What do you think? Is he in Western world? Is he in urban India? Is he in rural Thailand? Where do you think he comes from?
He's from the West.
Why do you say that?
One, because they call it cola there,
Mm-hmm.
and the way the address is structured, Cloud9. Usually, their addresses have that in them, like they have the street, they have the place, the house name, then the street name,
Mm-hmm.
kind of.
Do you think he lives by the ocean? Do you think he's an ocean loving person?
Yeah,
Why do you say he is an ocean loving person?
a lot of reference is made to nature. A lot of because he's mentioned as the river of cola and juices, as
Right. So if he's mentioned river and mountain, maybe he is not a ocean person. I mean, his fantasy seems to be that it is, uh, it is mountain and river. So these are ways and means of interpretation that comes in where you are looking at and saying, how do you deduce? Also, this aspect why you all said, I mean, many of you must have thought he's young, is that more than even the mountain of air and cola and juice and all of it, ice cream and biscuits are not something that, adults would fantasize about. It would be the child. And cola and biscuits are a giveaway as to can it be America? No, because biscuits won't be used there. And so you have certain kinds of acknowledgement where you're automatically consciously processing the words. This is a kind of analysis that can happen in a lot of the textual analysis, and how an author may have already been uh, kind of giving you clues to make you think in a particular manner, and then can always surprise you and say, hey, but I didn't tell you. And so that's something that you will have to be alert about as a writer. We will do retelling today, and I will share with you one kind of Ramayan, which I'll also put up as a link there. But we'll just look at how the retelling gets done and made. So the hut was, this is one sentence. The hut was located in a lane frequented by delinquents, drug dealers, and more often than not, the mafia. Is this positive or is it negative? So I'm asking a question. Is the hut was located in a lane frequented by delinquents, drug dealers, and more often than not, the mafia. So positive, neutral, negative. What do you think it is?
Negative.
Sorry, negative?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Just the way the sentence is written on the stress on who comes into the lane.
Yes. So all these words like, absolutely. So all the words like delinquents, drug dealers, mafia make us think that, oh, it's a bad place. Absolutely. So there is one which is our experience. Okay. Now, some of the things that we will be looking at is also things like what happens when we are writing pronouns. So I'm going to go back and forth between fiction and non-fiction for a very simple reason, that you will have to know both. Now, can you tell me why in business letters we don't say I am sorry? You know, most business letters, if I'm the manager of a company and I have a consumer who complained about a television set which was defective, I would not use the word I'm sorry to hear that. What would I say?
Think legally they try to not take responsibility in a way.
Huh?
They try to like not take responsibility, but if you say I
Uh, I feel usually they don't personalize business matters.
But then how would they write it? I mean, you obviously want to sympathize
We
with the person.
we are sorry, like as a company they are just representing the company or the
We
business,
are apologizing
like
on something, whatever.
So that's another thing. They will never use the word apology or sorry. You're right that they will, make it more inclusive and not make it one person saying. It will be we or, the company thinks or something of that sort. But another thing that would happen is that these are business letters to a large extent will be, in addition to being they will try and not say sorry. They will actively try to avoid saying sorry. Why? Because when do you say sorry?
When you take responsibility of what you did or what you said.
Yes, or when you are feeling empathy for someone, you're like, I'm so sorry for your loss or something like that. But typically in a business contract, when you say, I am sorry, it means the mistake was mine. And so you don't want to say that. And as a result of it, you have they would not say sorry, they will not say apologize. They will use another word, which is, we regret the inconvenience caused you. Because regret means only that, hey, you know what, you had this, it's a bad deal, I feel for you, but hey, we can't do anything about it. So regret is a word that they would use. They will try and use the word we to include more people in anything that they are not sure might become very legally liable, so it becomes a team meeting that comes in. So these are points that we generally have to keep in mind when we are saying what is a business transaction, what is a personal chat, what is it that a person who is a good salesman will do. He very cleverly knows which words not to use. He knows which words to use. So use of pronouns is it definitely they will try and say we because they want to have a relationship, but they won't say I because they don't want to make it about a person, but rather to the company. And so those are kinds of things that will take place. Another question is how and when do people use questions, when they are asking questions? Teachers ask questions a lot. That is definitely true. But what else? When else do we ask questions? Who asks more questions? Let me ask a very simple one. Who asks more questions?
Those who want to know more about anything, get information.
Okay. So in an entire age range of 0 to 60, who will ask questions?
children
Of what age? From what age to what age group will they ask questions?
around 4 to 7 and 8, the pre-primary students.
And after that, they don't ask questions?
Lesser. They are able to decode the pictures or letters or reading. Simple little reading has started, so they are busy in other learning things also. But initially, they are more like why.
Right. So you have learned developmental psychology, I'm sure, and in that there will be an entire chapter which talks about, which age your cognition starts and how your cognition is loaded actually by the age you are 9 or 10 in the pre-puberty years, and especially shoots up and matures more concretely in the puberty years. And that is when you're able to do abstract thinking. So your ability to do certain things are related to your motor skills, are related to your cognitive skills, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. And someone like uh, Chomsky and all of these people that you may have read may have also said it. So I'm saying that there are certain parts that you've already read and So children typically, yes, you're right. Children, very young children, always ask questions. They constantly want to know what is happening, and they will say why and what did he say and why did he say that, till you're just like, shut up. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they shut up by 8, because 8 years of being told to shut up and they finally shut up. But they constantly pester you with questions. They keep asking questions. Adults don't ask as many questions. A very interesting phenomena, because learning happens through questions. So why are you not asking those questions? Or maybe you have the questions in your mind but you don't ask them. So one of the points that also comes with questions is a position of power. Questions also give a symbolism of power. For instance, uh, let's take up this class. When I am asking a question, I don't feel diffident. I don't feel, oh my God, what will others think? I'm not thinking like that. I just ask the question, perhaps because I know the answer. Uh, when many a time as a student, instead of as a teacher, as a student, if I have to ask questions, I am diffident. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking, does my question reflect my ignorance? Does my question reflect that, I've not understood? Sometimes when I have a doubt, I disagree with my teacher. I want to say, no, I don't agree. How will I phrase that disagreement? Do you do that sometimes when you have questions and you're asking or you disagree with a point? There are entire
Uh,
studies done on this. Huh.
we we uh, we don't deny directly, but we can say, ma'am, I feel this can be also true, or I feel this can be, but we can't say directly, ma'am, I don't agree with you.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
modify the statement.
You modify the statement to say, I feel this. And then you also kind of end it at a rising intonation to say, I don't know, you can agree or disagree. I'm just laying it out here. Or sometimes people, add on a, "Mm, but that's not true, isn't it?" Kind of a question tag.
Yeah.
And you're like, or I'm not sure, ma'am, is it true that this is there? And so you always are asking it like a question when you really want to be correcting someone in a position of power. That's another thing with questions, right? Like questions can be a powerful tool, and it's a very interesting way of looking at how questions are. Questions are a tool of power in the hands of the powerful. And questions are a tool of negotiation for space in the hands of the powerless. And that's true in even many households or a sense, because, children have found this often. You will actually find, and this is true, you will find that there are more questions asked in a household based on the amount of power that there is. People with more power make statements. People with less power, or even if they feel that they don't have power, make the statements into questions, just as you just pointed out to me. And there are entire studies done on this about how women tend to be asking questions and tagging on these question tags, like, I was saying, what I mean? Um, right, you understand, and kind of those kinds of question tags, isn't it, or something like that. They found this, and they do lots of studies on these. For instance, when Hillary Clinton was running against Trump and Bernie Sanders and all of it, they just did analysis of her speeches, and they found that she uses a lot of question tags. They've done it for a lot of, especially people with power. They have looked at it and said that the women who are very authoritatively in power, say an Angela Merkel and Indira Nooyi or someone like that, would not phrase it as questions, but people in second command would phrase it as questions, which is a very interesting element to note, because children seem to have quickly deduced by the age of 8 that they do have some power and stop asking questions and start making statements. They don't say, till the age of 8 or something, they won't say, I disagree. But post that, it is so tough to get them to agree with anything that you say.
But
So-
ma'am, a question.
Yeah.
Asking a question, it means we are respecting the opposite person also, and we are making a channel to communicate. If we like directly say a statement, then there's no communication. The other person has to follow or obey, something like that.
Correct, absolutely. So this is the other aspect of it, and that is a very good point brought out, where if you notice sometimes when teachers are correcting, and in fact, even in your methods classes, you will be told, model it for the child. Okay, so model it for them by saying, okay, why do you say that? You don't tell them, do you think this is the case? You basically cannot be a reporter on news channels, because they generally ask you the question with the answer in it. It's so coronavirus has been out here for so many days. It is so difficult to go out and shop. It is so painful. Family people are feeling so stressed, and everyone is so stressed about it. How do you feel? I'm like, you've already given me my answer. What can I say? So you can't be that as a teacher. So you generally end up asking questions in a way to lead them towards that answer. So yes, you do use it as a tool to get them to agree with you in a very non-combative way. I completely agree with that. Uh, and again, something that women use very well, they will ask it as a question, and people will say, it's like parents, when the child is pestering you too much with all the questions, and you're like, whatever, fine, go, and so they sort of agree, because they have been sort of it's water dripping on a stone, and they agree in exasperation. That is where also questions can lead you. And these are important points to make, not because you're saying that this is a bad or a good thing. It is to also say, how can you use this tool to manipulate? And manipulation need not be always a bad thing. Manipulation can also be guidance. Every time you're guiding someone, you're kind of manipulating them into doing what you think is better for them. So it is a guiding tool. It enables you to guide them towards you. Questions can be very attractive. When you ask a question of the audience, as opposed to what you very rightly pointed out, when you say a statement, there is no communication. When you ask a question, instantly there is communication, because the other person has to respond now. So when I'm asking questions and then I say, okay, that was a question for you guys, and they're like, oh God, we have to unmute, answer, type kare, bole, kya kare. So those are, but they force the communication through. So the other part of questions, in a sense, if someone has asked a question, and we also say that for writing, we say, can you make it question, can you make it like a question rather than making it like a fact or a statement in that sense. So questions can be used in multitudes or multitudinal ways. For instance, bosses who want to look like they are one of their employees, and they want to be all camaraderie and all of it, they will try and ask questions. They will say, hey, what do you think? They won't come in and say, I want to do this. They will say, we have this problem. What do you think? What should be done? And the moment they do that, they are engaging in conversations of trust. And they are engaging in conversations where there is a conversation and not just a one-way communication. So questions can be used very well. Questions can also be used as powerful statements, as I said. I mean, of course, when a boss comes in, or when a teacher comes in, or someone of power comes in, parents come in, and they ask a question like, have you done your homework or something? You are feeling obligated to have, fulfill certain expectations and said that. So they can also be intimidating at times, and it really depends on how and where you're using it. So as a tool, it is extremely malleable. It can be a great relationship builder, but it can at the same time be a relationship breaker by asking very difficult questions. And this is important because if we are taking up characters and let me ask you this, not for a story, but for a non-fiction piece of writing, I'm a manager who wants to tell the customer, um, I want to tell the customer that we regret that your TV is not functioning, uh, but it is out of warranty and we can't do anything about it. Would the manager in the letter write a question like, when did you purchase? What can we do to help you? Would the manager ask this as a question, or would the manager phrase it in some other way?
Ma'am, I guess they will do it in another way. Like they will not ask exactly question, but they can like give the. Can you just provide these details of the product and purchase? So that.
So if I want to say that I'm not going to do anything for you, they won't even say, can you provide details? Because I know that it is out of warranty. So then why do I want the details? So I'll say, you may provide details and there may be, the process will take its own time, but there's nothing we can promise. Please let us know if there is anything else that we can do. Instead of saying that, they will say, please do be in touch with us if you have further questions or something of that sort. So they put the ball in your court, and they kind of do not use questions because that is a conversation builder and just make statements. And that's a complaint letter's response. The complaint letter, on the other hand, would have had specifically questions, or it would have had something else. Can you tell me what that is? If I'm the person with a with a broken TV, and I'm writing to this guy, the manager, I would have either said, what will you do? When can I get? What can I do? Or I would have had something else in my complaint letter. What is it?
What can be the procedure to complain my uh, TV or
So that
query?
is correct. That is basically again a question, right? Because you're asking ki, मैं क्या कर सकती हूँ? But
As
would there be
parents,
any
there
other?
will be a request.
Yeah, we request you to do this, or we order you to do. Please, ensure that my TV is replaced. I want my TV replaced by then. So I might make orders. I might make them polite orders, or I may make them very didactic, rude orders, but I will make orders. And so there are two ways that people will write. One is an order way write, and the other is a question kind of writing. And there's nothing to say one is better than the other, but definitely one is more of a conversation starter where you're like, you have to give me answers. The other is like, I've given you a multiple choice question, tick yes or tick no. Which one is a multiple choice question?
When you have a question and there are 3 or 4 options.
Yeah, and in this letter, when the person writes it as a question, it is a open-ended answer. And when the person says, you must, replace my TV by this and this date, or I'll go to the, court, and or whatever, or even if the person just says, you must replace the TV, I need the TV replaced by so and so date or whatever, you're basically making statements. And now the manager is like, I will figure out whether I want to mark yes or I want to mark no. But there's no compulsion in the structure for the manager to have to respond with an open-ended query. Whereas when you ask the question, the manager has to respond with an open answer. So those are kinds of ways where we are saying, how do you generate conversations, what you do with these kinds of questions, who are the people who are asking the questions, who are the people who ask more questions. So people who ask more questions are not always the ones without authority. Like doctors will ask you more questions, lawyers ask you more questions, teachers ask you more questions, and obviously they have authority figures. And in our family relationships, even parents ask children more questions after age 8, I guess. So it is not a kind of wrong thing to do, but it is also a kind of engagement, strategy, etc. Why would you want to remember this? If you are building a character, if you're choosing a text for a student to write, or you're choosing this, thinking through these effects enables the child to be more conscious of language use, enables the child to realize कि अच्छा इसीलिए हम question पूछते हैं, अच्छा इस जगहों पे हम question पूछते हैं. This is appropriacy. So there is a difference between accuracy and fluency, which is being extremely conversant without pausing. Though you may be slow in your speech, but you would actually not have all these fillers like oh, ah, oh, etc. And appropriate use of language. So that is something that we would have to be focusing upon also. And this is all in the kind of how language is to be thought of. Okay. I don't want to go here. Yeah. So can you read this passage out here, which starts with Roland and ends with anything else? Just read it. Okay, have you done it? Okay. Once, if you've read it, can you tell me, is the author someone who is located within the text? Is the author located in the text? Is this first person narration? Is the author there in the passage? I can't hear other than static.
I guess no,
No,
ma'am.
I guess no, ma'am.
Why do you say that?
Uh, because in this passage they are mentioning the two different person and what is going on in between them. So it's like there is a possibility that he's somewhere who is sitting there and watching them. Like it's like
But in this passage, he's not there. I mean,
yeah,
from this evidence, you don't feel that he is. Now,
yes,
I have another
Yeah.
question. This is, of course, this is the third person narration, and the third person narration is always like, I'm referring to the characters in third person, I'm naming them, etc. I don't have a dialogue with them. I describe them, or I tell you what they are doing or what they are talking. Uh, Do you like reading first person accounts? Do you like reading stories do you like reading autobiographies?
Yes.
Okay. Most of you like reading autobiographies?
I like fiction, like third person.
Third person.
Yeah.
No, even autobiographical things can be third person. I mean, can be fictional. For instance, you could have novels written as a first person, but they're actually novels
Yeah.
written using a fictitious identity. I mean, Virginia Woolf or James Joyce or, the Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable, all of them are first person novels, but they're not autobiographical and they are fictional. But you don't like that as much as you like the third person.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm going to ask one more question to both the people who answered me as one likes first person, the other prefers the third person. If someone came to you um, with problems, do you want to listen to it firsthand, or do you want to listen to it? Do you want to have had a warning about it before? So let me give you a more concrete example. Say my Kamwali Bai is there and she has problems, and I need to solve those problems. And so my Kamwali Bai, I tell her, she comes and she's sobbing her story out. Would you want to listen from her directly firsthand, or would you want to have some kind of, some neighbor auntie saying, "Are you know what? She came and she was crying all of this. I'm just telling you, हाँ वो तुम्हारे यहाँ पे आके रोना रोने वाली है." Would you prefer that warning, or would you just prefer her to share things with you?
Her direct sharing.
Yeah, directly.
No gossip.
No.
You guys are too good to be true. Okay, so this
uh,
is one key.
ma'am.
Yeah, sorry. Tell me.
No,
Hmm.
sorry, ma'am. But one, I think that warning is also like I'm thinking in another way, but like sometimes you get those between the lines also from who is interpreting for you. When you are listening it directly, the all interpretation and all those things you have to do that. But
So
sometimes when
is
third
that
person is telling you, they sorted out something in their angle maybe. So it's like if you're not very much concerned about that, then you will prefer that only, that okay, so somebody is telling about something, yeah, fine. But if you it's really concerning for you, then you will prefer direct learning, hearing from that person.
Yeah. So again, these are complex points. Obviously, they are not one in all points. I'm actually asking you not only to think about language, but about personality, about how people react, what is a modality of conversation and trust building, etc. It depends on preferences. We have had, and when we were counseling people who were homosexual, I mean, when we talk to people who are homosexual and they talk about their stories, which were the first time that they shared with the family that they were homosexual or they were gay or something of that sort, or whatever else, their addiction or anything of that sort. Uh, there are so many family members who say, काश मुझे पहले पता होता, you know, before this person came and shared this space with me, I wish I had had a warning. That person might be their son, their daughter, and that parent loves them desperately. But the parent is still saying that I wish I had known. Why do you think the person says it like that?
Ma'am, because somewhere it's a big revelation, so that I think they need some time to digest the fact so they can respond to it correctly.
Yes, agreed. Uh, it could be that.
Maybe
Yes.
maybe the child or the teenager has passed through so many dilemma and came to the conclusion to understand own self and then to tell parents ki I am this. So as a parent they will think ki the time when the child wanted my warmth or the time when he or she was in so much dilemma, I could not help him or her out.
So they are feeling guilty.
Not guilty, but they missed the time when the child actually wanted that support.
Yeah, so maybe they are feeling sorry or they are feeling कि काश मुझे पहले पता होता. No, but I'm not saying कि मुझे पहले पता होता from the perspective of what could I have done to help alone, though that's also there. Uh, so this becomes a
They might have
personality. Yeah,
they
yeah,
might
yeah, go
have
ahead.
some hope. I would have changed things little bit at least. If काश मुझे पहले पता
Yeah,
होता तो I would have done.
I will be Baba Ramdev and help them with their problems, is it? Okay. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it could be that they are feeling that they could have rectified it in time. They could have felt so many things. But to a large, I mean, these are people, for instance, these are people who feel ki I did not react properly and well when the person told me. So I think I hurt that person, so that is the kind of dilemma that they go through. They're like, I was so busy processing my own emotions, I was not able to respond to what the other person wanted. I don't know if I scarred him for life. There are times, right? Like the first time you come out of the closet or you're sharing some secret that is big for you, and someone's like, ha ha, theek hai, or oh my god kya kar diya, or whatever it is, you just sort of as a reactor feel that you are underprepared. And also when you're listening to the first person account, and please don't take my words as gospel truth, please think over, reflect, construct your own ideas and challenge me. Ask questions if you don't want to make them opposing statements, but it's fine, all right, but think over it. uh, when the first person, when a bhikhari comes and tells you, uh, you know, please give me food, or when the person, someone comes and says, "Arey, mere saath ye ho raha hai," it is so difficult to ignore, and you want to become a problem solver, and that is very taxing, and that is something that the first person autobiographical novel also does. In the entire market, autobiographical novels, and I'm talking of fiction, I'm not talking of factual ones like I don't know, a Boris Becker or an Andrea Gassi autobiography, or Mahatma Gandhi's My Experiments with the Truth. I'm not talking of non-fiction, I'm talking of fiction autobiographies. They don't do as well, they are not written as much as the third person accounting, and you need to understand kyun. Why are they not writing it in I or we when they could? Why are they always writing in he or she in that sense? And I want you to think a little bit more, because I've given you the hints. Why do you think the he or she works?
Ma'am, is it because he and she can make better connections than I?
Mm, okay, let me ask you this in another way. um, एक कोर्ट केस में गवाह होना क्यों जरूरी है? Why is the witness important in a court case? Murder happened, or some burglary happened, or something happened, and there is a criminal, and there is a person who is saying he is the one who did it, and you believe it, but you also still look for the witness. Why do you look for the witness?
Because it adds to some proof.
Yeah, it adds to the fact that you feel that कि ये बंदा ये क्यों झूठ बोलेगा, you know. For instance, if you haven't seen me face to face, and if I say the very blurry camera or anything, but if I say, oh, I'm very beautiful, you're like, हाँ देखेंगे, okay. Or I'm very ugly, and you're like, हाँ देखेंगे. So whatever I say about myself, you already in your head would have a preconception which says may not be true. You know, the neighborhood auntie, when you, after exams, I mean, all of us as children have gone through this trauma. Yes, after your exams, there'll be some neighborhood auntie who asks you, so marks kaise the? And you tell the marks. And then right in front of you, right the next minute, turns around to your friend and says, iske itne number aaye? And you're like, fir mujhse kyun pucha? Right? You've heard this kind of a dialogue because they think that the third party may be more credible. It's not that they distrust you as much as they don't trust your memory, and they think that you may not be exactly lying, but that you yourself are maybe misinterpreting. And those are reasons why the third person is preferred. Why am I doing the third person and all of this so much? In a lot of our writing, we have third person account. Is it easy for children to get third person? Come on, channel your Piaget and your developmental psychology and everything. When does the child start getting a sense of the other, the third person?
I have
I
no idea if I'm
think
right,
for-
but I think
when they
continue.
go.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
Rebecca, may I? This is Poonam here. When the children are in the first standard or the primary stage of learning, because still pre-primary is everything self-centered. Whatever they do, it is with I like this, I do this, I do this. But when they go out in a school and when they reach to the developmental stage of primary, they think of others, and then the statement comes for others.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar that around post the age of around 5, once the superego sets in.
Yeah. The superego is an important aspect, and it is not that they are not concerned about the other person, but all of that concern is in relationship to themselves. So they like the baby brother or the baby sister, but it is in relation to themselves. But post 5, it is for that person as an entity by itself. So yes, you're right. And those are important aspects, because it's not like every one of us grows at the same pace. There's always the, how much of the superego has developed, how much of it has not developed. And then you have this kind of empathy versus proactive reading and all of it. And so there are some of us, I don't know about you, but me, for instance, there are very few autobiographical books that I can relate to, because I'm constantly questioning that character, whoever is telling me the story. How do you know this? Where do you know this? Are you thinking this, or do you really know this? How do you know he thinks like that? who are you to tell me this? So I'm basically arguing with this character in my head, and everything that the character is saying, I'm distrusting. I'm like, I will, not that I'm not saying you're a liar, but I think there were possibilities for misinterpretation, And so I am constantly having this dialogue in my head. I don't know about some of whether, or, some of you at least may have that kind of aversion to reading. So it's a very busy place to read that autobiography. Non-fiction, actually, I find that to be easier than fictitious biography to a large extent. So an Emma by Jane Austen or something will be considered a more difficult novel to read because you have to suspend your disbelief. Now, these are important traits. Why? Why in academic writing do we constantly say you must refer? Why in great speeches do they often have quotations?
To check that the info shared is credible.
Yeah. Same principle applies even there, right? They're like, it's not just me saying it, it's another third person also who says it. It is not just me. It is, there is this host of people who are saying this. And that adds to the credibility of your argument, because otherwise I will just look at you and say, why should I trust you? So even when you're looking at the use of just pronoun, imagine the kind of cognitive, actual kind of subconscious layering of trust, of belief, of of coming together with credibility, all comes together. And why does it mean that we never trust? Of course we do, but we also sort of keep this questioning mind in our heads. And so you can build that credibility so easily by inserting another quotation. You can build that credibility by building in a structure where you say, okay, so talk to some third party to, find out about me, which is why many a time in interviews, people say, give references. I'm not going to necessarily call up the reference and ask, but just the possibility that I can makes me believe you a lot more. Otherwise, why should I believe you? You're just some stranger off the street with some fancy qualification. Why do I think you will be fit for the job? So you see how all we try and weave in these credibility structures, whether it is a resume, whether it is a fiction, whether it is your neighborhood auntie asking a child, did you really get the marks that you did? If your siblings, then parents verify with the other sibling. So unnecessarily you have to sort of keep that sibling sweet so that they don't let you, be blasted at, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so those are credible things, and these are small factors that matter in reading to a large extent. The rest of it is quite simple. Adjectives and stylistic devices we did talk about. I have shared this with you so you can look at how the questions are there, etc. But I would like to actually now look at another passage, now this time with the intent of thinking about characterization. And this is a very long one. This is a fine. This is okay. Can you read? Is this okay to read?
Yes.
Yeah. After you read this and we do this, I'm sure one of you will ask me ki break chahiye. I'll give the break. Okay. But ye karne ke baad, because that will complete this session and we can go to the next part. So if you can take 2 minutes, read it, and then I will ask you questions. I think maybe most of you may have finished reading. I'll give you 1 minute more max. Done? Okay, 10:58. 1 minute. Okay. This was not really a test of it, but I'm just going to ask you. The summary is given below, but let's look at some of the questions. What do you think of the passage overall? What did you think of this passage?
Uh,
Like, did you hate it? Is it neutral? Is it, I don't know, love? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry?
Hello.
Yeah.
Is it like the author is talking to, sharing with someone?
I don't know. This is exactly what I was talking about in the autobiography, right? Like, I got the another
Yeah.
barber that comes over and all of it. What do you think of the character? Is he what? Who is he? He's a barber. You pointed that out. But you know, is he a
Um,
nice guy?
he sounds practical because in the second
Sorry,
passage
sorry. Yeah.
he says, 1 minute, my phone is. He says that that most of the boys work all day and don't have no leisure to drop in here and get themselves prettied up. So, like, I think even though he's a barber, he understands like um uh, his um service might not be so vital for all the people over here, and so I think he's like practical in that sense.
And more
Oh.
simple also, not more competitive or why not to me and why to him. Okay, going guy.
Yeah. Right. And you got all of this like from 2 paragraphs. You kind of like the character. I just finished telling you that when you read a lot of first person account, it may be distrusted because you're like, mujhe kaise pata. But in this, you don't feel distrustful. You feel that this is the guy. Why and how does that come about? You know, if someone said, let me ask you this question in another way. If someone had started this barber starts a passage by saying, you know, I'm a very easygoing guy. I am very simple. I don't believe in competition. I am extremely generous. Would you believe him?
Not really, because
No.
he's talking for
No.
himself.
But
But
now you believe him. Now you believe all of those traits about him. Why and how?
Because his aim here is just to share his experiences. He's not going in trying to convince you that he's a good person. He's just sharing um what it's like in this town, and from
There
that
is
Right.
you can
a
gauge his personality.
there is a place to think for ourselves. Like we can give own opinion. Where in the other case, which sentence you said, it is labeled by himself.
Ha. So that is the other part of writing. and reading is to be aware that we trust ourselves more than we trust the author. So the way that why you believe this guy is because he's having a conversation in which he's not showcasing his qualities, but his qualities kind of shine through his actions. So he's like, you're a newcomer, aren't you? I have got another guy, but he can't come, and typically all these aspects. So a lot of this has been where Ring Lardner has built up this kind of conversation between a barber and someone else, and you feel like you are eavesdropping. And as you're eavesdropping, you are constructing ideas about the barber, and you're like, "Ha, ye acha banda hai. I have done my detective work, and I know this guy is good." So there is an active process of engagement, of judgment that is happening. All of these are not for a very low young class, not for a first, even a first standard class sometimes is not able to do that much. But even by second standard, they are able to think through certain very simple questions, not maybe this passage level, but some other simple questions. And they will say, oh, that boy was mean. Oh, I know he was mean. And why do you, and because he said that word that day. And they come up with these kinds of explanations. And they have done deductive work. They've used deductive reasoning, and they have come to these conclusions. So what you can do to build trust is therefore be recounting conversations. What you can do to build trust is to have it as in this manner where you almost feel like you're eavesdropping. And I always tell people, if you go on the train and there are two loud people talking right next to you, and there's someone who is like sitting 4 rows away from you whispering, you're more tempted to listen to the whisper than you are to to those people talking. They're talking and you can hear it easily, but you want to listen to that whisper. And it's very interesting and fascinating to find out how, uh, you know, those become beliefs in a sense. Okay, I am conscious I need to give you a break, but I just need another 2-3 minutes of your indulgence. Come back to this aspect here where we are looking at. And, there are certain questions that you will be able to name. You have already answered some of them. Where is the shop located? In which country? Near which town? And these are questions you can go back and look at the inference reading and state. What is the impression that you get of the town's residents from the first paragraph? Uh, what does the use of a double negative tell you about the character's education? So, uh,
He's
there is. Mhm.
I like from my understanding, people who are from the southern part of America use a lot of we ain't God no and that that
Yeah. Also the fact that we ain't New York and no Chicago kind of thing. So it seems to be like not a very big town, even if you're not looking at it. Yes. And also laughing, not laughing. So those kinds. And definitely America, because he says that it is America. So you can deduce so much about a person in terms of being able to answer about 14 and even more questions. Actually, I stopped myself. But a lot of questions from just reading up a three paragraph small excerpt. And all of this comes to us from language. It comes from the process of understanding the choice of vocabulary, understanding the choice of sentence structures. As I pointed out, even understanding the concept of structuring an argument. So when I use quotes, when I give credibility, when I pretend that I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to someone else, immediately your trust in what I am saying increases. It increases. Then you're like, so if a man tells one person tells another person, I love you, the person who is hearing I love you will be like, do you really? Other people, 5 other people hearing around them, all those airport scenes, they'll be like, oh, so nice. They really love each other. And you're like, how do you know? But you feel that. And And those are elements of trust building that comes in language structures. And you can, why am I talking about all of this? You can very easily use them in your writing to build those conversations of trust. You can very easily, now that you're consciously aware of it, build a dialogue in order to make it seem more credible. You can bring in a reference to make your writing seem more credible. And that is how you can build, trust and add to your arguments. I'm sure your arguments are in place, but how else do I structure it and write it? Okay. So think about this, mull over this. We will come back and do a bit of the writing exercise, which I have here. Not, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So what we will be doing is similarly going out from these elements, a lot of what I have spoken about, but also to try and build how persuasive arguments can be built in. So how does the role of the narrator look? Where is the story? And it is, this is when you say narrator, it's not necessarily a story that we have to do. Sorry. Oh, shh. So it's not necessarily the story that we have to do, but the character's point of view. Okay. Is a 5 minute break all right? Or, I mean, I'm happy to go on. I'll be here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that you all want it. Please ask questions. I'll come back to the assignment after this. Yeah. Okay. Screen share. Yeah. Can we begin? I think people have come back.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
can we begin? Yeah. So very quickly, I'm going to take you through to the classroom again. Oh, I should share screen first. 1 second. I keep forgetting that. So, yeah. I'm not going to go through this too much because some of it is pretty much easy and we have already discussed it. But these are all up on the slides and you can discuss and share. What I am going to do, and I will tell you that also at the end of the session, um, and clarify doubts because obviously you may have doubts, is how what these assignments will look like. Okay, so that's all that I will first clarify for you. What does it state? Okay, now let's take up this part, right? Which is what I was. So this might be easier for you to read in this manner. Yeah. Um, right. So if I talk about Mr. Morton, he gives one particular example of what a writing will be. When the narrator is telling the story, the characters are speaking the dialogue. There is direct characterization, as in I can meet the character directly, like you did in that Ring Lardner story, and make judgments for yourself. Indirect is when I will tell you what the person is thinking, and I don't know what to make of it. So indirect characterization is when the author is kind of leading you in the puzzle pathway. So here, he says, Mr. Morton's an example, was teaching the students about characterizations, and Kyle let out a big yawn. Indirect characterizations are implied, not explicitly stated, said Mr. Morton. So Kyle is bored or tired. He yawned, which shows that he's tired. Is it, when I say Kyle yawned, do I necessarily only get Kyle is bored or tired? Hello? Yeah. Like you all have already made this interpretation where you said that Kyle, Ring Lardner, the man is sweet, he's simple, he's easygoing, he's nice, he's not from a big town. All of those kinds of characters that you did was based on certain interpretations that you had. And so that is indirect characterization. Direct characterization would be where he says, I'm rich, I'm so and so, etc. Now, why and how will that make a difference is, I don't want to go through these slides. 1 second. Yeah. So this is one sentence. This is one paragraph. Read this one. Don't have to do anything. Just read it 1 minute, and then I'll take you to the next passage. Done? Kind of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now read the second passage. I just read this one. Okay? 1 minute. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. So now you know both the passages basically said the same thing. The question is on the slide. How are these passages different?
Um, Ma'am, basically, on the visual perspective, only the punctuation is the difference. But due to the placement of punctuation, the second paragraph is taking us exactly in the classroom where the punctuation are given. I'm saying about that paragraph. Exactly, we feel that the things are happening direct or just over there, where the other is a thing which we are reading, sort of.
Right. So he has said all of it, but it makes it feel that this is uh, a lot more real, live, dynamic. The second passage, I mean, that is, there's things feel that they're unfolding, and you're like, ab kya karega, vagera. With the same words, just because there is no punctuation, they are grammatically correct sentences. But because there is no punctuation, uh, it just seems so boring. It seems so dull and deadly. And that is another element of reading, that is another element of writing. Can you chunk things? Because what this punctuation is doing is chunking it. What this punctuation is doing is giving it dialogue, and dialogue always gives a passage life. And so, even when we are talking of speeches, we talk in the speeches. What is the one thing that you will tell students to write in speeches is use the word you, create a relationship with the audience by communicating with them, and just don't talk at them. And so, those are kinds of differences that occur, right? Now, this is where the passage becomes lively, there is retelling. And some students are very good at retelling, some students are very good at summarizing. So, we will check out one of the elements where not about summarizing but retelling. Uh, I don't know whether you have read this book called, if I had mentioned it, I think, if Ramayana were on on Facebook. Uh, yeah, I never remember what he's written. So this is I will this is, sorry, 1 minute. If you want the link, I'll share the link on Skype with you so that you are able to read it on your own also. Where am I supposed to go to the chat? 1 second here. That is where the novel is. Yeah. And this is where it is. You don't have to read the entire thing, but someone actually took the effort to write this, and this was written in 2012 or something like that. So it uses a lot of the old emojicons. So calendar emoticon, and Sita created the event Swayamvar. Ram accepted the invitation. Ram has been working out. Thumbs up. Sita likes this. Ram broke Shiva's bow. Sita and Janak like this. Ram and Sita got married. Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrughan like this. Bharat is pissed that his mother had Ram banished so Bharat could be king. Bah, parents. Bharat joins group. Parents sometimes go crazy. Bharat invited Ram to Ayodhya to be king. Shatrughan likes this. Ram RSVP'd no. Ram gifted a pair of slippers to Bharat. Bharat likes this. Bharat took the test, what kind of king are you? And got the result, Ram slippers. Bharat likes this. And so on and so forth. I have given you the link and you can read it. But now that you have read this much of content, would you want to read ahead? It's a 3-page. This is the end of page 1. And it's a 3-pager. So class, my question to you. What kind of writing will you call this? Hello?
Actually, it's given there. It's only a chronological order of events given in this story.
Huh.
So kind of telegraphic language used, very very brief, and only incidences are mentioned.
True. Only incidences are mentioned. True.
Ma'am, when we read Ramayana, because it's very holy book and we know many incidents and we have a different feelings or respect for the book or the serial Ramayana, and in this format, we are not able to link that format. It is just event happening. There's not that feeling or that thing is not coming while reading this.
And how would you say that it would be taken by this generation of people?
They would love this because it's more realistic to them, that more
I
easy
feel that,
to connect with.
yeah, because this would be more acceptable or interesting for the new gen.
Young people.
Yeah.
So one,
I
yeah.
I don't agree. I think you can't really get a proper story from this. This is just so brief that there is no enjoyment to reading it for someone who has probably never read it. Ramayana.
Yeah.
So do you think that
As
this is humorous? Okay, yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
I somewhat disagrees with Marisa, because those children who have heard the stories of Ramayana in their childhood from their grannies or mother, they only might feel this way. Otherwise, the younger generation who don't know much about Ramayana, they might like this, short and sweet.
I don't agree with Dipali ma'am, because if we see today in this lockdown period when the Ramayana is coming twice on Doordarshan, even the children, even the youngsters and the people who has already seen in their like before 20 years, all are enjoying at the same pace with own interest. So I agree with Marisa.
So
Read the
see,
story,
if you
seen the
think
story.
that people like, yeah, sorry. Yes, please go ahead.
I feel that if you've seen or read the story before, you can actually relate to this and actually make sense of what is being said in the narration there. And it is more happening because it's of the current age, and the children can relate better even after seeing what they're watching on TV. This is more relatable in that sense.
Yes and no. And I'm going to be asking more people to chip in with their own doubts if they have these kinds of doubts. Where were we? Yeah, we were here. Yeah, so the basic point is that, and that was what my question was actually. When when you when you read the title, if the Ramayana were on Facebook, is it presuming something? Is it asking a particular kind of, is it setting a kind of expectation? You know, like when we have these prerequisites for doing something, is it asking you to do that?
Yes, it is.
The title itself is asking, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, in that sense, uh, uh, when you are trying to read this, it is presuming that you already know the Ramayana, and then you are expected to. And I'll give you some structures. Uh, uh, One second for this session. So when you are reading, why is this stopping share? This is stop sharing. Okay. Now can you see my screen? I need you to see my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So now when you read this, for instance, when you first read Sita creates the event, Swayamvar, and Ram accepted the invitation to Sita's event, Swayamvar. What kind of an audience is this person asking you to be? Can this person, can the audience be an I don't know, a Mexican or an American or a, you know?
No, probably Indians only, because Swamvar word itself is from Sanskrit origin, and those who know the meaning of this word, can only understand what the writer is trying to say.
Correct. I mean, why would Ram like if you created a word, you know? So say Sita created the event meeting and Ram liked it, and you're like, Kyun? And so that's the same thing like Swayamvar. Unless and until you knew what it meant, you wouldn't. So there is a definite presumption of an audience type here. There is a tongue-in-cheek aspect where you are like Ram has been working out, Sita likes it. So you already know that they're setting it up like a modern romance. I'm not talking about whether it is good or bad, or I mean, I'm not even talking about whether you like it or dislike it. I'm talking about structures, how retelling, repackaging works in structures. So what this person has done is reconstructed Ramayan in a Facebook format. It's a creative way of doing it. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but it is a way of retelling a story which may appeal to some people and may not appeal to some people. As in this class itself, you find that it is appealing to you or to some, and it is not appealing to some, right? So that is one part out here. Now, when you have things like Ram broke Shiva's bow, again, this is presuming that you know that he didn't literally go to Shiva, take his bow away, and uh, take his bow away and then be chatting. That's not what he did. He broke something that existed. Again, they're expecting you to have prior knowledge. Ram and Sita are married, and you're like, suddenly, oh my God, how? And then Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughan, like it, Sita and Janaka. Who are these characters? So obviously, it is expecting you to know all of these kinds of ways, and it is a very it's a very advanced avant-garde way of pushing the boundaries to read this, and it is definitely taking you, you know, steps beyond where you may be comfortable reading. And this was basically written out here as a manageable plot, and that is why the person has also given you, and the link tells you that, how this has been written. So he published it in script in 2012 and actually wrote it in 2009. And the novel is there. It's a 3-page one that goes on and reads it. Now, why am I talking about all of these? Because we'll go back to classroom. Okay, where is... In the first session, in the first session is where we are in reading and reflecting texts. We have the syllabus. Now, one of the questions, and I have been trying to get you and lead you through this, in the next 10-15 minutes, I will lead you through these. In the last 2 to 3 sessions, I've also been asking you to be able to identify what are the kinds of strategies you can use to decode texts. I flipped it by asking you what is a pronoun used for, what is a tense used for, etc. But I've been asking you to basically understand how are the strategies coming. I am going to take you to a strategy page and we'll do a diagrammatic understanding of strategies. But this is something that you have to be conscious of, right? And obviously for all kinds of text, we won't use all kinds of strategies. Now for this Facebook post thing, you needed to know what does an emoticon mean. You needed to know what a thumbs up means. You needed to know what that calendar meant, like that. You needed to be able to recognize it as a calendar in the first place. And those are important elements that come through in, uh, you know, in the text, which are identify the different types of texts, identify the different types of strategies, identify how much more you need to know. So a second question that I have is it easy or difficult to read a comic book? Because I have so many parents who come and tell me, मेरा बच्चा पढ़ता ही नहीं है. And then you ask them, कुछ तो पढ़ता होगा. हाँ, सिर्फ comics पढ़ता है. So is reading comics a good thing or a bad thing? How difficult or easy is it? Your reactions, and we'll come back to these strategies. Do you read comics?
Yes. I
And do
feel
you
it
think
depends on, yeah, it depends on person to person. Those who are good in special orientation, they can easily read the text when which text should be read first and then second the other person. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. But the people who are visual learners, or those who find it easy to read the pictures also along with the text given, they find it very easy to read and comprehend it.
Right. So, absolutely. And those are elements where you'll be looking at and saying, the types of post, identify. So yes, you would be able to identify the fact that it requires a lot more of cognitive ability. Reading an infographic with the attendant text requires a lot more of your thought processes. It requires you to be both visual and verbal learners in a way that you can actually read something that is a chart or a graph or a picture and connect it to the kind of text that you're reading, where you are kind of sifting through data and processing that information and decoding it. So it will slow down some people, but some other types of learners, it may speed them up in reading. So when I'm reading a comic book, I'm generally a very fast reader, but when I'm reading a comic book, I slow down because I want to look at those visuals. I want to appreciate them and I want to see what those meanings could be. And I'm not that good at just quickly sifting through. I'm not saying a Mickey Mouse type of Disney comics are different, but the older manga comics or something of that sort. So, of course, your reading strategies will depend. Also, what
Also,
will differ is, sorry,
yeah,
what
ma'am,
will
I
differ is,
wanted
huh?
to say something here. As we said in the first lecture that a reading can be for curriculum based or a leisure activity. When we take
Yes,
reading as a leisure activity with the visual or a comic or pictorial, will make your mind more attached to it and relax, and it will serve the purpose. When it is only written thing, you need to be very alert, which won't be a leisure activity, I say.
Mm, yes and no. The reason I'm asking these questions is if you notice your textbooks, why are we doing this paper is also to go back and reflect on textbooks. A lot of the current textbook writing is actually based on the fact that you will, if you have noticed, have a lot of pictures. If you have noticed, will have comic appeals. Okay. And those are the elements that will come through in leisure activities. Uh, they will, what can I say? Uh, Let me give you one example. Okay, something that you would remember from your school days. When did you have, in state board books especially, when did you have colorful pictures? Did you have them in your language textbooks even when you were in 10th standard?
No, ma'am. If we
Not at
see
all.
the previous syllabus, which changed last 3 years, there is a vast difference. The previous state textbook were small and more written thing and black and white, and people don't like to see a state board का book है पता चल जाता है. But if we see today it is bigger, spacious, more colorful, and more activity type. Like in a lesson also, if you see in between, do you remember or do this, and then the content goes. Especially if we see the English and science textbook are more interactive.
Right. Absolutely. So, one of the elements that occurs in all of these kinds of reading in terms of strategies is the fact of how things, the same content, right? I mean, I still have Wordsworth poem in my English textbook. I still have Boyle's Law in my science textbook. I still have to study velocity in my science textbook, etc. But now the way that it is got presented is different. It is also making me stop because it is asking questions. It is making me pause, think, and therefore react and, as you pointed out, interact with the text. So it is making me, forcing me to have a conversation, right? By asking me a question, it is basically making me have that conversation. And it is not at the end of the text. It is right in the middle of the text. So all these kinds of structures of reading and reflecting on text are also about how am I making and using those tools and rewriting constructs in order to make you think, take you out of the box, figure it out, etc. So that is why I was doing these kinds of exercises to just tell you कि किस तरह से छोटे छोटे चीजों में होता है and how can you also map it to a larger text analysis passage. The other part of it was also that in addition to this, there is a skill development in responding to a text. And that skill development in responding to the text is what are the various strategies for comprehension. Some of you have already given me those strategies where you said that you would have to depend on what is a kind of text. You have to also see whether you can decode the visual. Can you decode the text? Can you decode the format? Will you like the format? Will you be wondering whether the format is suspicious? What are your biases and prejudices? And this is the reason why I was asking you for that question on biases and prejudices. Not everyone has done it. So, what are the strategies that come in? because the moment you have a bias, your summary will get affected. The bias may be for something or against something, but you'll be very selective in, identifying ideas and presenting them. Explain the various strategies for predicting. And this was again something that I was doing last class, where I was asking you what is it in terms of fun. But we can also have it for a lot of other things. I think one of the poems that I did not end up doing was Imtiaz Darkar's The Right Word. And please look at it. But it is a text again that is used for predicting, where she's constantly asking, am I using the right word to describe this person? And she's constantly re-engaging with it. So how is it that you have an indicator for recreational reading? What are these indicators that demonstrate, right? So these are the factors that we will look at. Now, this is what the module 2 and 3 to a large extent is expected to do. I will show you in session 4 this. I wanted to take you to the passage to see that. You don't have to read the entire text also if you don't want to. It's one chapter. But this is the strategy. I will have to keep it in portrait mode for you to be able to see the full thing. Yeah. This is the strategy. So there is a top-down processing that happens, and there is a bottom-up processing that happens, and we call it, basically we say this is the reception framework. And depending on how comfortable you are, you will be faster at reading and processing information. So bottom-up skills are what we teach young children, to decode. We tell them what is the word, what is the alphabet, etc., so that they can have language knowledge, which is vocabulary, grammar, punctuation, cohesion, orthography, etc. Another bottom-up skill is that there will be a kind of reading strategy which you base it on the element that a story has to be read in a chronological manner. Another question that I love asking students is, how do you know which is the next comic strip? How do you know that you must move left to right? Why won't you move right to left? So all of those are strategies for you to be able to understand. And then once you have got it, there is an interpretation or understanding of the written text at the literal meaning, at the discourse level of where it is. But there are a lot of other things that happen to the text. And this is why I wanted to do Ramayana with you all. There is a prior knowledge, there is a reading experience, there is a content schemata. So the same Ramayana, if I show someone who is, not on Facebook, I know that's very difficult to conceive, but we all have some family member or the other who is not on Facebook. And if they were given that, if Ramayana were on Facebook, they would look at you and say, "Ye kya hai?" You guys were at least able to decode. You didn't like it or disliked it, or you liked it, whatever, but you were able to decode what this is. You were able to look at those figures and say, I don't any longer use it, but I know what it is. Prior knowledge is very important. Another is discourse knowledge in terms of genre, register, the formal schemata, as you were pointing out. And the third is the purpose for reading. Why am I reading this is also important. Because if I'm reading it just the day before exam, I'm not going to pause and reflect and think, what should I understand? I'm just going to be like, yaad karna hai, yaad karna hai, yaad karna hai, yaad karna hai. So all of that will have an attack with the your reading strategies will depend on the purpose of reading, as you were saying. So what I'm saying is nothing new, nothing different from what you have already, all of you said over the past 3 classes. It is just that now it is in a diagrammatic representation. Metacognition is external cognition that will marry the purpose with the strategies. And all of this leads to pragmatics. And I wanted to understand what you understand by the word pragmatic. What is the definition of when will you use the word pragmatic?
A pragmatic is basically a person who has who learns by doing something
Yeah, so pragmatic, one of the literal meanings of pragmatic is practical, but pragmatic also refers to context. So there is a context setting that happens every time. So when you looked at this, there is a content schemata, there is a formal schemata, and then there is a contextual schemata, which is कि ये is so. Let me give you this. Uh, if someone said, yeah, right, that's absolutely amazing. Uh, it will depend on the context how you take them, right? Are they being sarcastic? Are they being rude? Are they being cautious? Are they being nice? All of it will depend on how they are being mapped onto the strategies. That's what it will try and talk about. So if you are talking to a teacher and some student is saying yeah right to the teacher, then you are assuming that the student is not being sarcastic. If the student is not being rude, it's an assumption. Again, it's not necessarily the knowledge. um, but given that, you may still feel that no, in this context, the student was being rude. In this other context, the student was being not rude. All of that comes within the pragmatics in terms of formal schemata, content schemata, everything. And all of that actually leads to finally your understanding of the written text. So, written text actually depends on all of these kinds of strategies. It depends on what is the context. It depends on the metacognition levels that you have of the external world. As one of the examples I had given you very early on, I think in class 1 or 2, I think 2, was will you use the word degree? I mean, 100 degrees. Will a child of third standard know what 100 degrees means? And you had said maybe you will introduce that if it is Fahrenheit in standard 6 when they are learning temperature. So these are the kinds of prior knowledge that you may need to have. And all of these are basically what enables your reading processes to be. And if these are the reading processes, and I'm going to very quickly show you the writing, it is very similar. And it is basically for you to be aware of how this happens. So again, in the bottom-up processing, language knowledge, grammar, spelling, vocabulary, punctuation. Now, it is from a production point of view and not from a reception point of view. There is editing instead of reading, right? There is still metacognition. There is assessment of writer's intention and awareness of audience. Instead of purpose of reading, now it is the writer's purpose. There is still discourse knowledge, which is formal schemata. There is still prior knowledge, which is content schemata. But now, instead of pragmatics, it is revision. And instead of interpretation, it is production. But the diagram remains almost the same. And they are all interlinked with each other. And they all talk about, and this one and the reading diagram talks about it as a process. Not all the processes are happening simultaneously. The processes are happening, but they may not be simultaneous. And if there is any delay in one process versus the other, then you have learning disabilities that get identified. So, for instance, someone with dyslexia may have prior knowledge, may have discourse knowledge, may have good metacognition skills, etc. But their language knowledge of grammar, spelling, their ability to decode and encode may be problematic. And so there is a language challenge that happens. And as a result, the entire process becomes very slowed down. It is like one brain that is just not doing its job. So that flow is where all of these come from. And that is what your classroom, yeah. That is what your paper actually asks you to consider and read. Now, coming back to the aspect, I said I will deal with assignments with you for now, and I will discuss the assignment. Based on this, what we have done so far, I am asking you to think through, uh, read the teaching questions, the one that I was discussing with you of Ring, Lardner, etc. It's a PDF file. Read that, and then for any one text that you identify, you would be trying to analyze the argument and be looking through it. What are the kinds of questions? You would be able to tell me whether the article is a retelling, is it a summary, is it in terms of, what is it that you're doing? You will be able to tell me whether it is a descriptive writing or an narrative writing or an analytical writing piece or anything. You will also be able to say whether the text uses its adequate genres. I don't want to teach you genre of writing because I think you know it. So does it use adequate genres? Is the register, is the style appropriate or not? And for the kind of person or the audience that you have. So that is what you will be able to do, and that is the answer. So let me give you one sample. 2 minutes. Do you have another class after this? You just need 2 minutes more.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll just finish off with this one. So in this, for instance, there is a sample passage given. This is just the second passage. I should have taken off the poem, but just take the second passage. It just says the stacks of pav are sprinkled with chutney and so on and so forth. Ignore the questions. In fact, I'll change this and I will only put the passage there. But basically, if you read this one passage, you should be able to tell me what kind of a text is it. You should be able to say what kind of language has been used here. What is the kind of audience that you can analyze based on this kind of a text. Some of the exercises and discussions that we were doing basically becomes your assignment too. Is that okay? You don't have to analyze this text, by the way. This was just a sample that I wanted to have here for discussion. But you have to identify any text piece. And the text piece can be, this is about 150 to 100 words. Your text piece can be just that. I mean, there's not even that much, I think. Your text piece can be just that long. It can be longer, but it is just that. It can be just 100 words also. Is that okay? Is this assignment clear? Identify a text. I'll put it up, but identify a text, analyze the style, and then look. Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, can the text it's not necessary that it has to just be fictional. It can be from non-fictional sources as well.
Yes. It can be anything. It can be a newspaper. It can be infographic. It can be a magazine article. It can be comic book. It can be anything. Okay, you have to take that text and you have to be able to analyze what are its features and what kind of audience may like it or dislike it, what kind of strategies will, inhibit appreciation or, promote appreciation in that sense, enable and disable in that sense, right? So there may be some people who may not like it, and to be also consciously aware of that. That is it. The next assignment would be the taking up any other text that is given and writing it for a particular, so you identify an audience, you identify the thing, and then you'll be able to write it. That's a final assignment. So that's a writing assignment. Right now you are finding a text. In your text, you find any text you like and analyze it. That's it. And the answer may not be too long. I don't think, depends on the length of your text, but I'm assuming it would be what, handwritten, 1.5 sides of I don't think it would be too long. It depends. I'm not denying, but you should have all those points. I will put them up but this is all that is there. All that we have discussed primarily. That's all.
So,
Okay.
ma'am, we have to give the text also from wherever we are
Yes,
taking, and
yes.
then below will be our analysis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. You have to provide the text. Basically, I am saying कि मुझे पढ़ना है, मुझे entertainment दो. You don't have to make it entertaining, but you will like a text, right? So what is it about the text? Now look at some textual features and see what is it about that text that you like it. So for instance, when I was talking about what happens when you use a pronoun, when you use a third person pronoun, and I don't think, I don't know whether before this you guys were looking at how pronouns can be trust builders, how they kind of make you feel trust, or how a tense can make you feel trust, because had versus will do it. All children will always lie to their parents when parents say ki have you done the homework, and they'll be like हाँ कर दिया है. क्योंकि अगर बोलेंगे ना कि आके करेंगे, तो पेरेंट्स उन्हें कभी खेलने जाने ही नहीं देंगे. बोलेंगे नहीं तुम झूठ बोल रहे हो. लेकिन somehow when you say हाँ कर दिया है, वो झूठ होता है, but parents believe it and parents are ready to say okay fine, go to play. Those are very interesting elements of how trust gets built. If you go to any astrologer or even any doctor who is trying to build your trust or anything of that sort, no astrologer ever tells you your future just like that. They build that. Those 20 questions that I was asking whether you have played, that's what they do. They will tell you, tum na bachpan mein ye karte the. And you're like, हाँ. Then they will give you another, तुम ये करते थे. And you're like, हाँ. तुम्हारे साथ अब ये होगा. And you're like, हाँ. Because, हाँ ना, you've been on the yes pathway. So, हाँ. So that is how trust gets built to some extent, based on your prior knowledge, playing on your prior knowledge, and then taking that and recasting it. So all these are kinds of strategies that we will deal with, and you just analyze and see. If you face any difficulties, text me on the classroom or in the Skype, wherever you are comfortable, and I will be available. Okay? I will put up all of this. Is this fine? Yeah, okay. All right, I'll stop recording and I will stop the call also. Thank you all.
Ma'am,
Thank you,
ma'am,
ma'am.